Here we're going to talk about putting together the competition condition with the wage curve and finding the point that is going to be the Nash equilibrium in the whole economy. So here's the figure. There's a lot going on, and so we're going to unpack it over several slides. So putting the competition condition with the wage curve gives us this model of the whole economy, like I said. So what does the wage curve do? The wage curve divides the space into two areas. So what we can see there is that we have this area with the wage curve, so that's the solid green line, and then we've got this shaded area beneath it where we say there's going to be no production. Now what do we mean by that? We mean that if the wage is below the wage curve, then what are workers going to do? They are not going to exert high effort consistent with the effort in the no-shirking model. Why? You're offering them too low a wage given the other factors. So the wage has to be on or above the wage curve in order to get workers to exert effort. So there's no production at wages below the wage curve. No production takes place because workers are providing no effort. What's next? Feasible production. So at wages on or above the wage curve, workers are working so production is feasible. So above and on the wage curve, workers will provide the effort required for production. That's the first point. Okay, so that's all about the wage curve and the two areas that we should think about with the wage curve. Effort, so wages on or above the wage curve results in the correct effort from workers. Similarly, the competition condition separates the figure into two areas in terms of what firms will think about with the product market, right, and them making enough profit. The first point is that at wages below the competition condition, employment expands because firms enter so long as the wage is on or above the wage curve. Okay, so firms are going to keep on entering until such point. So think about it here, we're in this region of the figure, right? So we've got wages determining effort along the wage curve, but we've got the wage that is consistent with the competition condition. And so what does that mean? It means that firms are going to enter and drive up the real wage until such point as it hits the intersection of the two curves at point N. That's what's going to happen there. Now the opposite is true if wages are above the competition condition. So what is that suggesting? It suggests that we're somewhere up here, so wages are higher than the competition condition. And what does that mean? It means that firms' costs are actually too high. Firms' costs are high, and what they have to do in this instance is that the benefits are less than the costs to them, and so firms are going to exit, and that's going to drive down the wage. Okay, so that's what we see on either side of this market. And so thinking about that, we've got a couple of different things that are going on. We firstly got investment. So production requires more than capital to hire workers, right? The wage must be such that owners of firms have the incentive to invest, ensured by being on or below the competition condition. So that's the same point about firms entering. Firms are going to enter and invest in a given industry if they can make sufficient profits. And that's going to be happening if the wage is below the competition condition wage. On the other hand, we also have to think about this work, the work and the wage level. So the wage and the level of employment, they must be such that workers have the incentive to work hard and well. What does that mean? It means that the wage must be on or above the wage curve. So we've got those two things going on, right? The firms, in order to have an incentive to invest and enter this market, their costs must be such that they're going to basically be below or on the competition condition. For workers, the wage must be on or above the no-shirking wage. Okay, so given that that means that we've basically got these four spaces in the curve, we've got on or below the wage curve, which is good for the firms, so firms are then going to enter, or above the wage curve, what's going to happen? The firms are going to exit. Then we've got, for workers, we've got on or above the wage curve. So the workers are going to continue to exert effort as long as wages are on or above the wage curve. Okay, not if the wage is below the wage curve. Okay, so there's only one region on or below the competition condition, and on or above the wage curve, that are conditions for both investment and for work to meet the no-shirking condition. So this is the feasible production region in which an allocation will be a Nash equilibrium. And the overlap of these two is going to be occurring at point N, as we can see. So what's going to be happening there in this region, firms are going to enter, the wage is going to increase, and the wage is going to be above or on the wage curve until such point as it hits point N, and we're going to have this point where we have the competition condition met and we have the wage curve satisfactorily met. The wage is on or above the wage curve, and the wage is on or below the competition condition. Okay, so at Hn, that's the Nash equilibrium level of employment of hours, so that's H along the horizontal axis. Owners of firms could not make more profit by changing the real wage. They must be on the wage curve. Okay, so they can't think about a way to try to offer more. If they offered more, what would happen? Their costs would be too high. And if their costs are too high, they'd have to exit. So they can't offer a higher wage than the wage that is on the intersection of the competition condition and the wage curve. Workers could not do better by working harder or working less. If they worked harder, they'd be incurring more disutility. If they worked less, they would be terminated because they wouldn't be providing the no-shirking level of effort. Firms leaving the economy are exactly offset by firms entering. So if for some reason some firms left the industry, as typically happens with firms kind of dying out, then some firms are going to enter the industry to replace those firms. And no firm can basically expand, can benefit by expanding or shrinking its capital stock and therefore its demand for labor. So they have to be on the competition condition. So the competition condition and the wage curve together jointly determine for us what is going to be going on in the product market and the labor market as we bring the two together. That gives us our Nash equilibrium level of employment in the whole economy. So, importantly, what do we also notice? This Hn, the Nash equilibrium hours of hired, is less than 1. What does that mean? It means that there is structural unemployment. The unemployment that exists at the Nash equilibrium is structural unemployment that exists because of incompleteness of contracts. Now, the unemployment that results from this fundamental structure of the economy is basically due to technology and the institutions, and institutions that captures this idea of contractual incompleteness. It's also got to do with the underlying production technologies. So we're unable to just monitor people perfectly, and as a consequence, we have this wage curve. So the difference between structural employment and realized unemployment, so even though this is the long-run predicted level of unemployment, in a given period, there will be the difference between this Nash level of employment and the actual employment in an economy. We would think that in the short run, that difference is cyclical unemployment, which is a result of the business cycle or anything else that results in the actual unemployment rate being different from the structural unemployment rate. So at Hn, what we have there, that's the structural employment, and the complementary 1 minus Hn, that is the structural unemployment.